I was having the kind of Monday that starts with a flat tire and ends with you accidentally locking your keys in the car with the engine still running. The universe had a personal vendetta against me. By 2 p.m., its chosen weapon was a malfunctioning espresso machine that had just sprayed my last clean apron with a sticky, caramel-colored Rorschach test. "I'm so sorry," I yelped, fumbling for a rag as the dark liquid cascaded off the stainless steel counter and directly onto the pristine, charcoal gray suit pants of the man who had just stepped up to the register. Time stopped. The low hum of the coffee grinder faded into a distant buzz. My eyes traveled upward, over the expensive leather shoes now speckled with droplets, past the impossibly tailored suit jacket, to the face of the man I'd just baptized in a double-shot latte. He wasn't handsome. Handsome was too soft a word, too harmless. He was carved, a face of sharp angles and grim lines, like a cliff face weathered by too many harsh storms. Dark hair, swept back, not a strand out of place. A jaw so tightly clenched I could see the muscle feathering beneath olive skin. And his eyes. They were the color of a winter sea. A pale, chilling gray blue that held no warmth, only a quiet, terrifying assessment. He looked down at the spreading stain on his thigh, then slowly back up at me. No one in the packed, trendy cafe made a sound. Not the students with their laptops. Not the business types on their phones. Even my manager, Marco, froze mid-wipe behind the counter, his expression a mask of pure horror. This man didn't belong here. He was a panther in a room full of house cats. An energy of controlled, potent danger radiated from him, so thick it made the air hard to breathe. The 2 men flanking him, younger, bigger, wearing similar suits but with a watchful, coiled tension, stepped forward. My heart attempted a frantic escape through my ribs. "I am so sorry," I whispered, the rag dangling uselessly from my fingers. "The machine, it's been glitching all day. I should have had a sign. I'll pay for the cleaning, of course, or..." He held up a single hand. Not a dramatic gesture, just a slight lift of his fingers. The 2 men behind him stopped instantly, melting back into the background. His gaze never left mine. It was like being pinned by a spotlight, seeing every stupid, panicked thought flicker across my face. "Aria." His voice was low, quiet, yet it cut through the silence like a blade. It wasn't a question. A cold trickle of fear, sharper than the spilled coffee, ran down my spine. "How do you know my name?" He didn't answer. His eyes flicked to the name and tag pinned crookedly to my ruined apron. "Oh, right, of course." He reached into his inner jacket pocket. I flinched, but he only pulled out a simple black leather wallet. He extracted a $100 bill and placed it on the counter, next to the puddle of espresso. "For the coffee I didn't receive," he said. His tone was flat, devoid of any discernible emotion. No anger, no annoyance, nothing. That emptiness was somehow worse than if he'd yelled. "Sir, please, that's way too much. Let me at least get you a towel or a new coffee on the house." "It's fine." He turned, the movement effortless and smooth despite the coffee stain now marring the perfection of his attire. "The situation is resolved." And just like that, he walked out. His 2 shadows followed, one of them pausing to hold the door open. The cafe remained frozen for another 3 beats before the everyday chatter rushed back in, louder than before, charged with nervous energy. Marco scurried over. "Aria, do you have any idea who that was?" "A very well-dressed man with a dry cleaning bill," I muttered, grabbed a handful of Sani wipes, and started scrubbing the counter, my hands trembling. "That was Vito Cascio," Marco said, as if the name were a curse. At my blank look, he leaned in, lowering his voice. "Cascio, as in Cascio Consolidated, as in the family." The way he said "the family" didn't mean a happy group of relatives at a picnic. It meant something else entirely. Something that belonged in whispered news reports and gritty true crime documentaries, not in my sunny, overpriced coffee shop in the middle of the city. "You mean mafia?" The word felt ridiculous coming out of my mouth. Marco just gave me a wide-eyed, solemn nod. "They own half the buildings on this block. They're quiet, but you don't want their attention. Trust me." I looked down at the $100 bill, crisp and accusing. I'd just spilled coffee on a mob boss. A real, live, suit-wearing, icy-eyed mob boss. And he'd paid me for the privilege. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of jitters. Every time the door chimed, I jumped. Every man in a suit looked like a potential enforcer coming to finish the job. By the time I clocked out, the anxiety had solidified into a heavy, cold lump in my stomach. The walk to my apartment was only 5 blocks, but tonight it felt like a mile. The city lights were too bright, the shadows between buildings too deep. My mind replayed the moment in slow motion. The spray of coffee, the look in his eyes, the utter lack of reaction. He hadn't been angry. He'd been indifferent. Like I was a minor inconvenience, a bug he couldn't be bothered to swat. That was the scariest part. My apartment building was old but charming, a walk-up with a creaky stairwell that always smelled vaguely of cabbage and hope. As I fumbled for my keys at my door on the 3rd floor, a new wave of unease washed over me. My hallway light, which had been flickering for a week, was now completely dark. "Perfect," I mumbled, squinting as I tried to fit the key into the lock. "Aria Bell." The voice came from the darkness to my left, from the alcove where the trash chute was. I shrieked, my keys clattering to the floor, my back hitting my door with a thud. A figure detached itself from the shadows. Not Vito Cascio. One of the men who had been with him. Younger, maybe late 20s, with a sharp, handsome face and carefully styled dark hair. He wore a different suit now, but the watchful, dangerous air was the same. "Mr. Cassio would like a word," he said, his voice polite but utterly unyielding. A word? He had a word, at the cafe. He said the situation was resolved. My voice was too high, edged with panic. "A new situation has developed." The man bent smoothly and picked up my keys. He handed them to me, his movements precise. "Please, it will be brief. A car is waiting downstairs." And if I say no, for the first time, a flicker of something showed in his dark eyes. Not a threat, but a simple, factual assessment. It would be unwise. The choice wasn't a choice. I knew it. He knew it. With shaking hands, I took my keys. "I need to put my bag inside." He gave a slight nod. "I'll wait." I unlocked my door, my mind racing. Should I call the police? And say what? That a man who'd paid for spilled coffee was now politely inviting me for a chat? That I was being kidnapped by good manners and ominous implications? I left my bag just inside the door, a tiny, useless act of defiance that this wasn't a permanent departure. Then I stepped back into the hall, locking the door behind me. The man, I realized I didn't even know his name, gestured for me to precede him down the stairs. A black sedan, sleek and unobtrusive, idled at the curb. The back door opened as we approached. Inside, in the shadowy interior, I could make out Vito Caccio's profile. "Get in, Miss Bell." His voice, calm and cool, floated out. I got in. The door closed with a soft, expensive thud, sealing me inside with him. The car pulled away from the curb, smooth as silk. The interior smelled of leather and something faintly spicy, like sandalwood. He was looking out his window, his profile stark against the passing city lights. "You paid me," I blurted out, the words tumbling into the tense silence. "You said it was resolved. What is this?" He slowly turned his head to look at me. In the confined space, his presence was overwhelming. That cold, focused energy filled the car. "The coffee," he said, "was irrelevant. This is about what you heard after I left." My blood ran cold. "Heard?" I didn't hear anything. I was cleaning up. Everyone was talking about you. I caught myself too late. A ghost of something, not a smile, never a smile, touched his lips. "Indeed, but you were standing closest to the counter, to the 2 gentlemen who were waiting behind me. You were distraught, wiping up the mess. People talk when they think no one is listening." I racked my brain. The 2 men behind him. Business people, maybe? They'd been muttering to each other. I'd been so focused on my mortification and fear that I'd barely registered it. "I don't remember," I said, and it was mostly the truth. "Try." The single word was a command. I closed my eyes, trying to push past the panic of the memory. The hiss of the machine, the splash, his cold eyes. And then, in the background, a snippet of conversation. "Shipment tonight, Dock 7. The Bianchi problem." My eyes flew open. Something about a shipment, and a problem, a name, Bianchi. Vito Cassio went very still. In the dim light, his eyes seemed to glow with an icy intensity. "That," he said softly, "is a problem." "I don't know what it means. I don't want to know what it means." Desperation clawed at my throat. "Please, I'm nobody. I make coffee for a living. I'm working to pay off student loans for a degree in art history I'll never use. I have a cat who throws up on the rug when he's anxious. I am the definition of unimportant. You can just let me go. I'll forget everything. I already have." "Unfortunately," he said, turning to look out the window again as the car navigated towards the more austere financial district of the city. "The men who said those words will not believe you have forgotten. And if they believe you heard, and you are a loose end, they will tie it up. Permanently." The finality in his tone left no room for doubt. I was a loose end. My mouth went dry. "Who are they?" "Business rivals." He said it the way another person might say tax auditors, with detached distaste. "Their methods are less diplomatic than mine." A hysterical laugh bubbled in my chest. He considered paying someone off after a coffee assault diplomacy. "So what does that mean for me?" My voice was a thin thread of sound. The car slid into the underground parking garage of a towering glass skyscraper, one of the monolithic buildings that defined the city's power. It slowed to a stop in a reserved spot near a private elevator. "It means," Vito Cassio said, turning to face me fully as his driver opened the door, "that for the time being, you are under my protection, and you are coming with me." The private elevator didn't have buttons. The driver, a massive, silent man with a neck thicker than my thigh, inserted a key, then pressed his thumb to a scanner. The doors closed, and we ascended in a hum of expensive machinery. Vito stood perfectly still beside me, his hands clasped behind his back, staring straight ahead at the polished bronze doors. I watched our distorted reflections, him, a tower of grim authority, me, a rumpled, wide-eyed ghost beside him. We didn't go to an office floor. The elevator opened directly into what I could only describe as a penthouse fortress. It wasn't a home. It was a command center disguised as a luxury apartment. The wall facing the city was all glass, offering a dizzying panoramic view of glittering nighttime towers. The interior was all cool grays, stark whites, and dark wood. There were no personal touches, no photos, no garish art, no clutter. Just a few pieces of severe modern furniture and a series of large, dark monitors on one wall, currently displaying maps and silent security feeds. A man was waiting for us. Older, maybe mid-50s, with salt and pepper hair and a weary, intelligent face. He wore a cardigan over a dress shirt, looking more like a tired professor than a mobster. "Leon," Vito acknowledged, stepping out of the elevator and shrugging off his suit jacket. He handed it to the man without looking. "The stain. See to it." "Of course." The man, Leon, took the jacket, his eyes flicking to me with open curiosity before returning to Vito. "The Bianchi matter?" "It is now a twofold problem." Vito walked to the window, his back to us. Aria Bell. She was behind me at the counter. She heard them mention the shipment and the name. Leon's face tightened. He looked at me with new, sympathetic alarm. "Oh dear. Oh dear." I echoed the word absurd in this context. "What does that mean?" "Oh dear. Like I'm in for a scolding, or oh dear. Like I'm about to be cement shoes deep in the river." Vito half-turned, a flicker of what might have been impatience in his icy gaze. "The river is inefficient and traceable. A cliché." He said it as if correcting a grammatical error. My legs felt weak. I leaned against a cold, steel-framed chair. "You're not making me feel better." "He doesn't intend to," Leon said softly, moving to a discreet wet bar. He poured a glass of water and brought it to me. "Drink. You're in shock." I took the glass, my fingers trembling so badly the water sloshed. I drank anyway. It was cold, grounding. "So what happens now? You lock me in a tower until... when? Those men forget?" "Salvatore Bianchi does not forget," Vito said, turning fully now. He'd rolled up the sleeves of his pristine white shirt, revealing forearms corded with muscle and the glint of a sophisticated black-faced watch. "He is a rabid dog who has been nipping at my heels for months. This shipment is... significant. He will eliminate any perceived risk to it. You are now a perceived risk." Because of 3 words I barely heard. 3 words are all it takes to start a war or end a life, Leon murmured, returning to stand near Vito, a loyal lieutenant. "So I'm a hostage." "A guest," Vito corrected, his tone leaving no room for argument. "For your own safety, until the Bianchi situation is resolved." "Resolved." I let out a shaky breath. "And how long will that take?" "As long as it takes." He gestured to the young man who had fetched me. He was standing silently by the elevator doors. "This is Matteo. He will see that you have everything you need. There is a guest suite down the hall. You will stay there. You will not leave this penthouse. Is that understood?" Entirely glass, offering a dizzying panoramic view of glittering nighttime. It was delivered not as a request, but as a decree. The rules of my old life, cafe shifts, student loans, anxiety-ridden cat had evaporated. New rules, authored by this cold, terrifying man, were in effect. Matteo stepped forward. "This way, Miss Bell." I looked from his polite, impassive face to Vito's unreadable one, then to Leon's worried one. I had no cards to play, no leverage, just the terrifying knowledge that outside these sterile, secure walls, a man named Bianchi might want me dead. I set the water glass down on a coaster that probably cost more than my weekly rent. "My cat," I said suddenly. "His name is Gizmo. He'll be alone. He needs food and his anxiety medication. It's in the bathroom cabinet." For a long moment, Vito just stared at me, as if processing a request in a foreign language. A demand about a pet's mental health was clearly not a contingency his world accounted for. Leon cleared his throat. "I'll have it retrieved, discreetly." Vito gave a single sharp nod. "See that you do." That was it. My captivity was sanctioned, my cat's well-being accounted for. Matteo gently touched my elbow, guiding me away from the vast living area and down a wide hallway with plush, sound-absorbing carpet. He opened a door to a room that took my breath away for a different reason. It was beautiful. A king-sized bed with linens that looked like clouds. Another floor-to-ceiling window with a breathtaking view. A bathroom with marble and a deep soaking tub. It was a luxury hotel suite, a gilded cage. "The closet has basic necessities in various sizes," Matteo said, his voice neutral. "There is a phone on the desk that connects directly to the kitchen or to Leon's office if you require anything. The windows are reinforced and do not open. Please do not attempt to tamper with them." He paused at the door. "Dinner will be brought to you at 8. Is there anything specific you would like?" "To go home," I said, the words thick. He didn't react. "I'll have something light sent up. Try to rest, Miss Bell. You are safe here." He closed the door. I didn't hear a lock click, but I knew it didn't matter. I was locked in by circumstance, by threat, by the sheer immovable will of Vito Cascio. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the silence of the room pressing in on me. It was a profound, insulated quiet, so different from the constant sirens and chatter of my apartment. I was safe, that's what Matteo said. But safe from Bianchi only meant I was now firmly, utterly, in the grip of Vito Cascio. Hours crawled by. A silent woman in a neat uniform brought a tray of food. Seared salmon, asparagus, roasted potatoes, and a slice of flourless chocolate cake. It was the best meal I'd eaten in years. I tasted none of it. I thought about Gizmo, alone and confused. I thought about my manager, Marco, who was probably filing a missing person report tomorrow. I thought about the sheer, surreal insanity of it all. Restless, I explored the room. The closet did indeed contain clothes. Simple, elegant trousers, blouses, sweaters, all in neutral colors, all looking roughly my size. There were even toiletries in the bathroom, unopened and high-end. The efficiency of my imprisonment was insulting. As night deepened, I paced. Finally, drawn by the city view, I stood at the window. From this height, the world was a map of light and motion, beautiful and utterly detached. My old life was down there, in one of those specks of light. And up here, in this rarefied air, I was trapped with a man who looked at the world like it was a chessboard, and people like they were pieces. I must have fallen asleep on the oversized sofa by the window, because I jerked awake to the sound of raised voices. Men's voices, tense and angry, filtering from the main living area. One was Vito's, colder and more challenging than I'd heard it before. The other was unfamiliar, guttural and furious, and, creeping to my door, I pressed my ear against the cool wood. "An insult, Vito, a direct challenge!" the unfamiliar voice snarled. "Your man was in my territory, Carlo," Vito's voice replied, deadly calm. "Selling poison to children outside a school, that is not business. That is an abomination. My rules are clear." "Your rules? You think you're a king? You're a relic. The Bianchis understand the new world." "The Bianchis are animals, and you have chosen your side. The consequences are yours to bear." There was a thick silence, then the sound of something heavy being set down. A glass? A weapon? "My nephew," the man named Carlo said, his voice suddenly trembling, whether with rage or fear I couldn't tell. "He's just a boy." "He stopped being a boy when he put a needle in a 14-year-old's arm," Vito said, and there was no mercy in his tone, only a terrible final logic. "You have until dawn to leave the city. If you or any of your people are seen after that, you will share his fate." A choked sob, then rapid retreating footsteps. The main elevator dinged open and closed. The silence that followed was heavier than before. I stood frozen, my ear still pressed to the door, my heart hammering. I'd just overheard a death sentence being passed, a ruling from the throne of this penthouse. The cold, brutal arithmetic of Vito's world. I heard a soft sigh, then Leon's voice, much closer than I expected, right outside my door. "You can come out, Miss Bell. The meeting is over." Startled, I jumped back. After a moment, I turned the handle and opened the door a crack. Leon stood there, holding a small paper bag and a familiar worn cat carrier. Gizmo's angry yowl emanated from within. "Your cat," Leon said, handing me the carrier, "and his food and medicine. He put up quite a fight when my man tried to get him in the carrier. Spirit." Tears of relief and absurd gratitude pricked my eyes. I took the carrier. "Thank you. It's no trouble." He hesitated, glancing back towards the living area where Vito stood silhouetted against the city lights, a solitary, dark figure. "He's not what you think," Leon said quietly, almost to himself. "He just threatened to kill a man and exiled his family," I whispered. "He enforced a law," Leon corrected gently. "A brutal one, yes. But in our world without law there is only chaos. And Vito, he hates chaos more than anything." He gave me a tired smile. "Get some rest. And perhaps keep the cat in your room tonight. Mr. Cassio isn't fond of animals." I took the carrier into my room and closed the door. I freed a disgruntled, puff-tailed Gizmo, who immediately hid under the bed. I sat on the floor, offering a piece of the salmon from my discarded tray as a peace offering. From the other room, I heard the low murmur of Vito and Leon talking, then the sound of a glass being filled. I thought of the man named Carlo, fleeing into the night with his family. I thought of the nephew. I thought of Vito's face, that utter lack of emotion as he delivered his verdict. Leon was wrong. I understood precisely what Vito Cassio was. He was the storm. And I was caught in his eye, in a deceptively calm prison, waiting to see where the winds would throw me when he decided to move. The next morning arrived with a quiet knock. Not Matteo this time, but the silent uniformed woman with a breakfast tray. Scrambled eggs, fruit, toast, and coffee that smelled like heaven. Gizmo, having forgiven me for the traumatic carrier experience, wound around my ankles, demanding tribute. I fed him a piece of egg and drank the coffee. The rich flavor a small, vital anchor to normalcy. I was halfway through the toast when Leon appeared at my open doorway. He carried a tablet and wore a different, but equally professorial cardigan. "Good, you're eating," he said, stepping in. "We need to discuss your employment." I nearly choked. "My what?" "While you are a guest here for your safety, it is irregular to have a non-affiliated person in this residence for an extended period. It raises questions with staff and creates logistical complications." He tapped his tablet. "Mr. Cassio has approved a solution. You will be given a role, a cover, if you will." "A cover?" I set my coffee down. "Let me guess. Sex slave, laundry girl, human shield?" Leon's mouth twitched, the closest I'd seen him come to a smile. "Archival assistant." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Mr. Cassio's late father, Silvio, was an avid collector. Rare books, historical documents, art. The collection is vast and has been poorly cataloged since his passing. It's housed in a private library on the sublevel. The task is genuine. It will give you a reason to be here, access to a part of the residence, and keep you occupied. You mentioned an art history degree. It should be within your capabilities. I stared at him. Of all the surreal turns my life had taken, being offered a job as a mobster's archivist was perhaps the most bizarre. And if I refuse? Leon's gentle demeanor didn't change, but his eyes grew serious. "Then you remain confined to this room, Miss Bell. Indefinitely. With only your cat and your fear for company. This is a measure of trust. And a measure of control. I suggest you accept." The choice again was no choice. But this one came with a sliver of something. Freedom of movement within the prison, a task, a use for my expensively useless education. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll do it." "Excellent." He seemed genuinely pleased. "Matteo will take you down after breakfast. The rules are simple. You work in the library. You do not wander. You do not attempt to access any other areas. The security doors are biometric and will not open for you. You take lunch in the staff dining room at noon. You return to your room by 6. Understood?" I nodded. An hour later, following Matteo through the stark, elegant halls and into a different service elevator, I felt a nervous flutter that wasn't entirely fear. We descended 1 floor. The doors opened not onto a dank basement, but into a climate-controlled, softly lit wonderland. The library was breathtaking. It was a vast 2-story room, all dark mahogany, rolling ladders, and the rich, peppery scent of old paper and leather. Sunlight streamed through a large, leaded glass window on the far wall. Thousands of books lined the shelves, along with portfolios, document boxes, and glass cases displaying fragile-looking scrolls and illuminated manuscripts. "Wow," I breathed, the sound swallowed by the quiet. Mr. Cassio's father was a complex man, Matteo said, his usual neutrality colored with something like respect. He loved beautiful things. The system is over there. He pointed to an antique desk holding a surprisingly modern computer and scanner. "Leon will send you the existing digital catalog. It's a mess. Your job is to make it not a mess. Lunch is at 12. I'll come for you." He left, and I was alone in the silent, beautiful vault. For the first time since the coffee disaster, I felt a thread of genuine purpose. This was a language I understood. I sat at the desk, powered up the computer, and opened the file Leon had sent. He wasn't wrong. The catalog was a chaotic jumble of inconsistent entries, misspellings, and missing data, and I started simple. I picked a nearby shelf of 19th century European art histories. Pulling the first volume, a heavy tome on the French Impressionists, I felt the familiar, comforting weight of a book in my hands. I began the meticulous work of checking the title, author, edition, and condition against the database, correcting errors and adding missing details. The work was immersive, methodical. It required just enough focus to quiet the screaming panic in the back of my mind. For a few hours, I wasn't a hostage. I was a graduate student again, lost in the minutiae of preservation. I was so engrossed I didn't hear the door open. I only felt the change in the air, a sudden drop in temperature, a prickling on the back of my neck. I looked up. Vito Cascio stood just inside the library watching me. He wore another impeccable suit, this one a deep navy. He held a file folder in one hand. He didn't speak, just observed, his pale eyes taking in the scene. Me, the open book, the scanner, the ordered stack I'd begun. Leon's idea, he stated. Yes. My voice sounded small in the vast room. Is the work satisfactory? What do you think I could say? The captive working conditions are acceptable. The collection is remarkable. Your father had incredible taste. Something shifted in his face, a minute tightening around his eyes. He had obsessions. They are not the same thing. He walked further into the room, his footsteps silent on the Persian rug. He stopped before a glass case containing a stunning, jewel-encrusted medieval psalter. This was his first major purchase, stolen from a Hungarian monastery in 1944. He spent a decade and a small fortune tracking it down, not to return it, but to own it. He looked at me. Is that taste or obsession? The question felt like a test. I closed the book in front of me carefully. It's history, a terrible one. Owning it doesn't change that. It just means you're the current custodian of a stolen story. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze inscrutable. A philosophical perspective for a barista. A barista with an art history degree focusing on provenance and wartime looting, I said, a spark of defiance flaring. That psalter belongs in a museum in Budapest. And yet, he said, turning back to the case, it is here. He didn't say it with pride, but with a simple, grim finality. This was the nature of his world. Things were taken and then kept. He changed the subject, tapping the file folder against his palm. Bianchi has moved the shipment, up by 24 hours. It arrives tonight. The fear came rushing back, cold and immediate. What does that mean? For resolving the situation? It means the timeline has accelerated. He finally looked away from the psalter and back to me. My people will intercept it. When we do, Bianchi's attention will be elsewhere. The direct threat to you will diminish. Your stay here may be shorter than anticipated. Oh. A confusing mix of relief and something else, anxiety, stirred in my gut. Freedom was the goal. So why did the thought of leaving this gilded cage feel suddenly uncertain? That's good, is it? He asked it so softly I almost didn't hear it. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the shelves, as if seeing his father's ghost in the collected volumes. Out there, you will still be the woman who heard something. Your name will be in certain circles. The protection I offer ends when you walk out that door. You're saying I'll never be safe. I'm saying the world is not safe, he corrected, his voice hardening back into its usual flint. My world simply acknowledges the fact more openly than yours does. He placed the file folder on the edge of my desk. For Leon. See that he gets it. He turned to leave. Mr. Cascio. He paused but didn't turn. The man last night. Carlo's nephew. What will happen to him? He was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, without looking back, he said, he will be given a choice. Rehabilitation, far from here, under guard. Or the consequence promised. And if he chooses wrong? Vito Cascio finally glanced over his shoulder, his winter sea eyes meeting mine. For a fraction of a second, I saw not cruelty, but an immense, weary burden. Then the consequence is mine to bear as well. He left, closing the library door softly behind him. I sat there, my hands flat on the cool leather of the art book. The exchange had left me shaken. He was a monster. A calm, precise, suit-wearing monster who discussed art theft and violent justice in the same measured tone. But monsters, I was beginning to see, could have codes, and they could bear the weight of them. Matteo picked me up for lunch at precisely noon. The staff dining room was a pleasant, sunlit space adjoining a professional-grade kitchen. A few other people were there. The silent maid, a couple of men in casual clothes who had the alert bearing of security, and Leon. They all nodded politely but kept their distance, talking in low tones amongst themselves. Leon waved me over to his table. "How is the cataloging?" he asked, pushing a bowl of soup towards me. "Overwhelming but good." I hesitated. "Vito was just down there." Leon's spoon paused. And he told me the Bianchi shipment is tonight, that things might resolve soon." Leon nodded slowly, taking a sip of water. "That is the plan. It's a significant risk. Bianchi is unpredictable." Vito said, "He said when I leave, the protection ends, that my name will be known." "It's the truth," Leon said, not unkindly. "You are an innocent who stumbled into a shadow war. Shadows have long memories." He studied me. "You could stay. The archival work could be permanent, a new identity here, within the organization. It's not a life many would choose, but it is a life, a secure one." He was offering me a permanent cage, a bigger, more comfortable one, with a meaningful job. The alternative was a world where a man like Salvatore Bianchi might still be looking for me. The choice was dizzying. "I need to think," I whispered. "Of course." Leon patted my hand. "For now, just eat. You have books to catalog." I returned to the library, but my focus was shattered. My eyes kept drifting to the stolen psalter, glittering coldly under the lights. A stolen life. That's what Leon was offering me. A new one, crafted by Vito Cascio. I thought of Vito's face when he spoke of consequences. The unbearable weight of being the one who makes the rules, who must then enforce them. As afternoon light slanted through the window, painting gold bars across the mahogany floor, I made a decision. I wasn't ready to choose a cage, not even a gilded one. But I also wasn't prepared to run blindly back into a world that wanted to swallow me. I needed to understand the storm I was in before I decided whether to seek shelter or try to outrun it, and that meant understanding Vito Cascio. When Matteo came at 6, I was ready. "I need to speak with Mr. Cascio," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. Matteo raised an eyebrow. "He is in meetings." "It's important. About the collection. A discrepancy I think he should know about." The lie felt flimsy. Matteo considered me, then nodded. "I will inform him. No promises." I was back in my room, nervously stroking Gizmo, when the knock came an hour later. It was Matteo. "He'll see you. Briefly. Follow me." He led me not to the living area, but to a room I hadn't seen. A private study, smaller than the library but no less imposing. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive clean desk, and Vito, standing by a side table, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquor. He'd shed his suit jacket and tie. The top button of his shirt was undone. He handed me a glass without asking if I wanted it. A discrepancy. I took the glass, the crystal heavy and cool. Not exactly. I took a fortifying sip. The whiskey was smooth, burning a path of warmth down my throat. "I wanted to ask you a question." He leaned back against his desk, sipping his own drink, waiting. The dim light of a single desk lamp carved his sharp features into even starker relief. "If I choose to leave after this is over, what would you do?" He didn't hesitate. "I would have Matteo drive you home. I would have Leon provide you with a severance package. Enough to relocate, start fresh somewhere Bianchi's reach is weak. And then, I would forget you existed." The words should have been a relief. They felt like a dismissal. Just like that. Just like that. His eyes held mine. "My protection is not a chain, Arya. It is a transaction. I incur a debt when an innocent is harmed because of my conflicts. I am repaying that debt by removing the threat. Once the threat is neutralized, the debt is cleared. The transaction ends. So cold, so logical. I was a line item on a moral balance sheet. And if I wanted to stay? The question left my lips before I could stop it. Something flickered in his eyes. A crack in the ice. Surprise, maybe. Then it was gone, sealed over. Then you would become an employee with all the benefits and the risks that it entails. Your safety would be a priority, but not a guarantee. You would live in my world by my rules. You would see things you cannot unsee. He set his glass down. It is not a choice to be made lightly, or out of fear. I'm not, I said, though fear was a constant hum in my veins. I'm making it because I cataloged first editions today worth more than I'll earn in a lifetime. I drank whiskey that costs more than my car. And I spoke to a man who carries the weight of every decision he makes as if it were a physical thing. This isn't about fear of Bianchi. Not anymore. He was silent, watching me, a predator assessing a creature that had just done something utterly unexpected. What is it about, then? I shook my head, finishing the whiskey in one bold swallow. The warmth spread through me, lending me courage. I don't know yet, but I'd like to finish cataloging the collection. Before I decide. A long, taut moment stretched between us. The air felt charged, like before a lightning strike. Very well, he said finally, his voice a low rumble. The library is yours until the Bianchi matter concludes. Then you will give me your answer. He picked up his glass again, a clear signal that the audience was over. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me at the door. Aria. I looked back. The Psalter, he said, his gaze distant. What is the name of the museum in Budapest? The question shocked me. The Museum of Fine Arts. Why? He didn't answer. He just gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Good night. I walked back to my room, my mind reeling. The storm had a name, a code, and now, perhaps, a conscience. And I was no longer just caught in its eye. I was starting to map its winds. The atmosphere in the penthouse the next day was a taut wire, humming with a tension so palpable it made the air feel thick. Men I hadn't seen before, sharper, harder looking than Matteo or the usual security, moved through the halls with silent purpose. The quiet was different, not peaceful, but the heavy calm before an artillery barrage. Leon found me in the library mid-morning. His face was grayer than usual, the lines around his eyes deeper. You should stay in your room today, Arya. It's tonight, isn't it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The shipment. He gave a tight nod. Vito is occupied. You should remain out of sight. Meals will be brought to you. The idea of being cooped up in that beautiful room with only my spiraling thoughts for company was unbearable. I'd rather work. It keeps my mind off things. It keeps me from imagining what occupied looks like, I didn't add. Leon studied me, then sighed. Very well. But if you hear anything at all, you stay in this room. Do not come out. Do you understand? I understand. He left, and I tried to lose myself in the meticulous work. I moved to a new section, Renaissance treatises on architecture. The precise geometric illustrations usually fascinated me. Today, they were just lines on a page. Every creak of the old building, every distant murmur from the elevator shaft made me jump. Gizmo, sensing my anxiety, stayed under the desk, a warm, furry weight on my feet. The hours dragged. Lunch came and went, a sandwich I barely touched. The sunlight through the leaded glass window moved across the floor, casting long, thin shadows. As late afternoon bled into evening, the penthouse fell into an eerie, waiting silence. That's when I heard it. Not from the halls, but from outside. A resounding, percussive thump that vibrated through the very bones of the building, followed a few seconds later by the faint, wailing scream of sirens, many of them, converging from different directions. It was distant, muted by the fortress-like windows but unmistakable, Something had happened. My heart hammered against my ribs. The rule was to stay put. But the silence that followed the sirens was worse than the noise. It was a void into which my imagination poured every terrible possibility. Had Vito's people intercepted the shipment? Had Bianchi's? Were men bleeding out in a warehouse right now because of 3 words I'd overheard? I couldn't stand it. I had to know. Cracking the library door open, I peered into the empty hallway. The main living area was dark, lit only by the city's ambient glow. I slipped out, padding silently on the plush carpet. As I neared the great room, I heard voices, low, urgent. Peeking around the corner, I saw Vito. He stood with his back to me, phone to his ear, flanked by Leon and Matteo. He still wore his suit, but it was rumpled, and he'd rolled his sleeves up past his elbows. Even from behind, his posture screamed controlled fury. "How many?" His voice was a whip crack. A pause as he listened. His free hand clenched into a fist at his side, knuckles white. "The driver?" Another pause, longer. The tension in his shoulders seemed to ratchet tighter. Understood. The word was final. Cold. He lowered the phone. For a moment, he just stood there, a statue of rage and grief. Then he turned slightly, and the light from the city caught his profile. There was a smear of dark grit on his cheek. Not blood, but soot. "The warehouse was rigged," he said to Leon, his voice hollow now, the fury banked into something more dangerous. "A secondary explosion. They were waiting for us. Marco is dead. Enzo is in surgery. They took the shipment." Leon closed his eyes, a pained grimace crossing his face. "Salvatore's work. He's graduated from rabid dog to something with venom," Vito said softly. He finally noticed the smudge on his cheek and wiped at it with a weary, mechanical motion. It only smeared further. He wanted to send a message. "He has." Matteo spoke, his voice tight. "What are your orders, sir?" Vito was silent, looking out at the city. When he spoke again, the hollow tone was gone, replaced by a terrifying, absolute clarity. "We return the message, but not tonight. Tonight, we bury our dead and tend to our wounded. We let Bianchi think he's won. Let him get comfortable." He turned fully, and his winter sea eyes, usually so cold, now burned with a glacial fire. "Then we burn his world to the ground." I must have made a sound, a gasp, a shuffle of my feet. All 3 men turned as one. Leon's face filled with dismay. Matteo's with alarm. Vito's. His was unreadable. A mask slammed back into place over the raw emotion I'd just witnessed. "I told you to stay in the library," Leon said, but there was no heat in it, only exhaustion. "I heard the explosion," I whispered, my eyes locked on Vito. I was worried. The word hung in the air, absurd and revealing. Worried. About him. About the men who worked for him. Vito took a step towards me. The soot on his face, the slight dishevelment, made him look more human and more terrifying all at once. "You have a dangerous habit of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, Miss Bell." "Is everyone?" I couldn't finish. "No," he said flatly. "Not everyone." The finality of it was a physical blow. A man named Marco was dead. Another, Enzo, was fighting for his life, because of a war I'd inadvertently eavesdropped on. "I'm sorry," I said, the words utterly inadequate. His gaze swept over me, from my worried face to my simple work clothes. "Your concern is misplaced. Go to your room, now." It was a dismissal, sharp and cold. The vulnerable moment was over. The boss was back in command. I felt a stupid, sharp sting of rejection. Nodding mutely, I turned and fled back down the hall. Back in my room, I curled into a ball on the bed, Gizmo nudging his head under my chin. I'd seen the machinery of his world up close now, and it was lubricated with blood. The cold, logical chess master had just lost a piece, and the fury beneath his calm was volcanic. I'd also seen something else, the weight the real human cost that his consequences entailed. He bore it. He wiped soot from his cheek and gave orders for the dead. Sleep was impossible. I just stared at the ceiling, listening to the occasional quiet movement in the hall. Sometime after midnight, there was a soft knock. Not Mateo's firm rap. Cautiously, I opened the door. It was Leon, holding a small tray with a steaming mug. "Chamomile with honey," he said. "I thought you might need it." I let him in. He set the tray on the bedside table and sighed, sinking into the armchair by the window. He looked ancient in the moonlight. "Marco had a 3-year-old daughter," he said quietly, not looking at me. "Enzo's wife is 7 months pregnant. They weren't soldiers. They were drivers, logistics, good men." The horror deepened, crystallizing into specific heartbreaking images. Why would Bianchi do that? If he got the shipment? To prove a point. That Vito is vulnerable. That his rules can be broken. It's how animals like Bianchi gain power, through spectacular, senseless cruelty. Leon took off his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. Vito will retaliate. It is inevitable now. But it won't be like this. It will be surgical, and it will be total. And where does that leave me? I asked, my voice small. In more danger than before, Leon admitted. Bianchi's confidence is inflated. If he even suspects Vito has a soft spot, a woman staying in his private residence, he will try to use it. You are no longer just a loose end. You are a potential weapon. The walls of my gilded cage seemed to shrink, transforming from protection to a target painted on my back. So what do I do? You make your choice, Leon said, standing up. And you make it soon, before events make it for you. He paused at the door. Drink the tea. Try to rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. He left, and I was alone with the terrible arithmetic of my situation. Stay, and become a pawn in a bloody gang war, possibly a weapon against the man who protected me. Leave, and step into a world where a psychopath might be hunting me, without the only force seemingly capable of standing against him. The tea grew cold. I didn't sleep. Dawn was a gray smear against the window when a new sound pulled me from my exhausted stupor. Not an explosion. Music. Low, haunting. A melancholic piano piece filtering softly through the vents. Chopin, I thought. The nocturne in C-sharp minor. I followed the sound. It led me not to the main living area, but to a part of the penthouse I'd never seen. A small enclosed solarium filled with lush green plants and the faint, humid smell of earth. And there, in the pre-dawn gloom, sat Vito Cascio. He was on a wrought iron bench, still in yesterday's clothes, his head bowed. A sleek, modern sound system on a shelf was the source of the music. In his hands, he held not a phone or a weapon, but a simple, worn leather photograph frame. He was so still, so utterly absorbed in his grief that he didn't hear me approach. I was about to retreat, to leave him to this private moment, when he spoke without looking up. "My mother played this," he said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "When I was a child, when the world outside was too loud, too violent, she would sit at the old piano in our sitting room and play this nocturne. It was the only time I ever saw my father be still." I stood frozen, unsure if I was invited or intruding. He finally looked up. The mask was gone. In the soft gray light, he looked ravaged, exhausted, haunted, the weight of his crown too heavy to bear. The soot was gone from his face, but the shadows under his eyes were darker. "She died when I was 15, a car accident, not a war, not an assassination. Just rain, a slippery road, and bad luck." He looked down at the frame in his hands. "My father bought this Psalter 2 months later, said beauty was the only antidote to ugliness. He was wrong. Beauty reminds you of everything you've lost." He held out the photograph. It was a picture of a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, her arm around a boy of about 12. A younger Vito, his face already serious but not yet hardened. She was beautiful. She wanted me to be a pianist, he said, a ghost of something like humor in his tone. Or a historian. Something quiet. Something clean. What did you want? The question slipped out. He was silent for a long time, looking at his mother's face. I wanted to be strong enough that no one I loved would ever be afraid again. He set the frame down carefully on the bench beside him. A childish wish. Fear is a constant. All you can do is become the thing others fear more. The music swelled, a passage of deep, sorrowful beauty. We stood there in the quiet jungle of the solarium, the mob boss and the accidental witness, surrounded by the ghosts of who they might have been. I'll stay, I said. The words seemed to hang in the humid air. He didn't look surprised. He just watched me, those pale eyes seeing everything. You understand what that means now, he said. It wasn't a question. I understand that Marco's daughter will grow up without a father. I understand that Enzo's child might be born while he's on a ventilator. I understand that the man who caused that listens to Chopin and misses his mother. Took a shaky breath. I don't understand your world, but I'm starting to see its shape, and I'm not ready to walk away from it. He stood slowly as if every movement cost him. He walked towards me until he was close enough that I could see the fine lines of exhaustion around his eyes, smell the faint scent of smoke and sandalwood that still clung to him. This is not a refuge, Arya, he said, his voice low and intense. It is a battlefield. By staying, you pick a side. There will be no going back. The art history graduate, the barista, that girl will be gone. She will have seen too much. She's already gone, I whispered, meeting his gaze. She disappeared the moment a man named Bianchi decided her overhearing 3 words was a death sentence. Something in his expression shifted, thawed at the edges. The glacial fire in his eyes didn't dim. It shifted focus, as if seeing me not as a problem or a pawn, but as a person standing before him, making a conscious, terrible choice. Then welcome, he said, the word heavy with meaning, to the family. He didn't touch me. He didn't smile. But he gave a single, slow nod, a sovereign acknowledging a new citizen of his bleak kingdom. Then he turned, picked up the photograph of his mother, and walked out of the solarium, leaving me alone with the dying notes of the nocturne and the terrifying, specific knowledge that my life had just irrevocably changed course. I had chosen the storm. Now I would have to learn to survive its winds. The following 2 days passed in a grim, focused blur. The penthouse was a bunker preparing for war. The regular, quiet rhythm was replaced by a constant, low-level activity. Men coming and going. Hushed conversations in corners. The scent of strong coffee permanently in the air. Vito was a ghost, present only in the orders that filtered down through Leon and Matteo. I saw him once, striding through the main room with a tablet, his face a closed book, his eyes fixed on some distant strategic horizon. My world contracted to the library in my room. The archival work became my anchor, my meditation. I catalogued with a furious intensity, as if organizing these stolen, beautiful things could impose some order on the chaos swirling outside the vault door. I found myself drawn to the darker pieces, a Goya etching of war's folly, a Caravaggio reproduction of Judith Cooley severing Holofernes' head. Art about power and its consequences. Leon was my main point of contact, my translator for this new world. Over a tense lunch in the staff dining room on the second day, he laid out the new realities. You'll have a detail, he said, pushing peas around his plate. Matteo primarily. Another man, Leo, when Matteo is off shift. You do not go anywhere without one of them, even within the building. Understood? I nodded. And my job at the cafe? Resigned. Effective immediately. A family emergency out of state. Marco was very understanding. Leon's tone made it clear that understanding had been financially encouraged. Your apartment lease has been terminated. Your belongings will be brought here. Select what you wish to keep. The rest will be stored. It was so efficient, so total. My old life was being erased entirely. And Gizmo? The cat stays with you, of course. He almost smiled. Though I'd keep him away from Vito's suits. The one with the coffee stain has been retired. I couldn't muster a laugh. What happens now, with Bianchi? Leon's face went grave. Vito is gathering intelligence. Bianchi is celebrating, getting sloppy. He's boasting about the hit, trying to recruit Vito's shaken allies. When he is at his most arrogant, when he feels most secure, that is when Vito will strike. Not at the shipment, at the source. You're going to kill him. It wasn't a question. We are going to remove him, Leon corrected, but the euphemism was thin. And dismantle his operation. It must be absolute. Anything less leaves a wounded animal, and they are the most dangerous. The clinical discussion of murder should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a cold, unsettling sense of necessity. This was the logic of this world. Bianchi had killed a man with a young daughter. He would do it again. The only way to stop him was to erase him. The moral simplicity was brutal, but it was a kind of clarity my old world, with its shades of gray and bureaucratic half-measures, never offered. That evening, as I was closing up the library, Vito appeared in the doorway. He looked marginally less like he was carrying the weight of the world, though the tension still radiated from him in waves. "A progress report," he stated, walking in. He went not to my desk, but to the shelf where I'd been working, his fingers trailing lightly over the spines of the books I'd catalogued. "The Renaissance architecture section is fully documented and cross-referenced," I said, falling into a professional tone. "I've started on the collection of Ottoman miniatures. The condition notes are detailed. I've flagged 3 items that may need conservation attention from a specialist." He picked up one of the flagged items, a delicate, hand-painted map on vellum. This was a gift from a Turkish diplomat. My father helped his son out of a legal difficulty in Milan. He studied the intricate details. "You have a good eye. Leon says your work is exemplary." "It's just organizing. It is preserving a legacy," he corrected, setting the map down with surprising care. "A complicated, often ugly one, but a legacy nonetheless." He turned to face me, leaning against the bookshelf. "Your training begins tomorrow." "Training? You have chosen to stand in this world. You will learn its rules. How to recognize a threat, basic evasion, how to not be a liability." His gaze was assessing. "Matteo will instruct you. In the mornings here, after the library is secure. So I would spend my afternoons cataloging stolen art, and my mornings learning how to survive a kidnapping attempt." The absurdity was almost poetic. "Okay," I said. "You accept easily." "Well, what's the alternative? Being a liability?" I met his eyes. "I don't want to be the reason someone else gets hurt." Something flickered in his expression, approval perhaps. "Good." He pushed off the shelf. "Dinner is at 8. You will join me." It wasn't an invitation. It was another decree. Before I could respond, he was gone. At 8 o'clock sharp, I stood outside the dining room, wearing one of the provided simple black dresses, feeling utterly out of my depth. The room was formal, dominated by a long table that could seat 20. Only 2 places were set at opposite ends. Vito was already seated, reading something on a tablet. He looked up as I entered. "Sit," he said, gesturing not to the far end, but to the chair immediately to his right. I sat. A server appeared instantly, pouring water, then wine. The first course was a silken cauliflower soup with black truffle. We ate in silence for several minutes, the only sound the soft click of spoons against porcelain. "You play an instrument?" he asked abruptly. The question startled me. "The piano, a little. I haven't played in years. My mother's piano is in the music room. It is tuned. You may use it if you wish." It was an unexpected offering, a window into a private part of himself he'd shown me in the solarium. "Thank you. I might." "The nocturne you heard. Could you play it?" "Not well, it's complicated. Most beautiful things are," he said, taking a sip of wine. The conversation lapsed again, but the silence felt different now, less oppressive, more thoughtful. The main course arrived, a rack of lamb with herbes de Provence. As we ate, he began to speak, not about business or threats, but about the city, the history of its neighborhoods, the architecture his father had loved to hate, the best place for fresh pasta that nobody knew about. He spoke with a quiet, deep knowledge, the perspective of a man whose family's roots were sunk deep into the city's foundations, above and below ground. I found myself listening, fascinated, asking questions. He answered them all with that same precise, unemotional clarity. It was the most normal interaction I'd had since spilling the coffee, and the most surreal. Here I was, dining with a mafia boss, discussing urban history and lamb cookery. As dessert was served, a dark chocolate torte, he set down his fork and looked at me directly. The Bianchi operation commences in 72 hours. All the fragile normalcy was shattered. The air went cold. So soon. The intelligence is conclusive. He will be at a private club he owns, the Gilded Cage, celebrating his victory with his inner circle. It is the optimal time. His voice was back to being flat, strategic. You will be here, with Leo and a reinforced detail. This penthouse will be on lockdown. You will see nothing, hear nothing, but you will know it is happening. And you? The question was out before I could stop it. I will be elsewhere, overseeing. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. He would be in command, but distant from the violence. The general is in his bunker. Be careful, I whispered, then immediately felt foolish. He didn't mock me. He just studied me for a long moment, his gaze traveling over my face as if memorizing it. Careful is not a luxury I can afford, Arya. But I will be thorough. Dinner ended. He stood. Good night. Good night, Vito. The use of his first name made him pause, just for a second. He gave that same slight nod and left the room. The next morning, my training began. Matteo met me in a converted spare room on the sublevel, with padded mats on the floor and a mirrored wall. We start with awareness, he said. All business. Forget what you see in movies. Most violence is fast, ugly, and over in seconds. Your goal is not to win a fight. Your goal is to create a fraction of a second of surprise and use it to run. He taught me how to stand, how to hold my body so it appeared less like a target. He showed me pressure points, the eyes, the throat, the groin, and how to strike them effectively with keys, a pen, the heel of my hand. We practiced a simple break from a wrist grab over and over until my muscles ached and the motion felt less foreign. You're a quick study, Matteo said after an hour, handing me a water bottle. I'm motivated, I panted, wiping sweat from my brow. He almost smiled. That's the best kind. The training became part of my new routine. Morning drills with Matteo. Afternoons in the library. The quiet scholarly work was a balm to the morning's adrenalized lessons. Evenings to myself, though I often found myself in the music room, tentatively picking out scales on Vito's mother's beautiful resonant piano. I never saw him there, but sometimes when I played a phrase correctly, I'd imagine I felt his presence, listening from the shadows. On the eve of the Bianchi operation, the tension was a live wire again. Vito was a constant, pacing presence in the command center, his voice a low, steady murmur on phone calls. I stayed in the library late, unable to face the silence of my room. He found me there just before midnight. I was at the desk, not working, just staring at a detailed illustration of the Tower of Babel, a monument to arrogance and downfall. You should be asleep, he said from the doorway. I can't. He walked in, coming to stand beside the desk. He looked at the illustration. An apt choice. Is it arrogant? What are you about to do? It is necessary. He leaned over, turning the page of the heavy book. The following illustration was of the aftermath, the scattered, confused people. The arrogance was Bianchi's, thinking he could break the rules without consequence. This, he tapped the page, is the consequence. He straightened. Come with me. He led me not to the living area, but to a secure balcony I hadn't known existed, shielded from view by angled glass. The night air was cool and crisp. The city glittered below, a galaxy of human lives. Out there, he said, his voice quiet, are butchers, bankers, and baristas, fathers, daughters, lovers. Most will never know my name. That is how it should be. He turned to me, his face etched in the city's glow. What I do tomorrow is to keep that separation intact, to keep the chaos on my side of the line, so theirs can remain ordinary. I understood then, He saw himself not as a king, but as a warden, guarding a door between the world of brutal order and the world of fragile normalcy. It was a monstrous, self-justifying logic. But in that moment, looking at the weary resolve in his eyes, I believed he believed it. "Will you come back?" The question was childlike, desperate. He didn't answer with words. He reached out, his hand hovering near my cheek for a breathless second, before his fingers gently brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was startling in its tenderness, electric against my skin. It lasted less than a heartbeat, but it burned. "The library will need you tomorrow," he said, his hand falling back to his side. "The Ottoman miniatures await." And then he was gone, back into the heart of his war machine, leaving me on the balcony with the ghost of his touch and the crushing weight of the night to come. I didn't sleep. I sat by my window, Gizmo purring in my lap, watching the city. Somewhere out there, plans were being set in motion. Men were checking weapons. A man named Salvatore Bianchi was laughing in a club, unaware his world was about to end. And a man who never smiled, who carried the weight of a stolen psalter and a mother's lost dream, was moving pieces on a chessboard soaked in blood. I had chosen his side. As the first faint hint of dawn tinged the sky, I knew with cold certainty that when the sun rose again, nothing would be the same. For the city, for him, and for me, the day of the operation dawned gray and still. The penthouse was a tomb. The usual soft sounds of service were absent. Only Leo, my detail for the day, moved through the spaces with a silent, watchful intensity. He was older than Matteo, with a face like worn granite and eyes that missed nothing. "Lockdown protocol is in effect," he informed me as he brought a breakfast tray to my room. His voice was gravelly and quiet. "No one in or out until the all clear. You have the library in this room. I'll be outside your door." The food tasted like ash. My nerves were a hive of static. I tried to lose myself in the Ottoman miniatures, tracing the intricate patterns of gardens and palaces with my finger. But the beauty eluded me. Every minute felt like an hour, stretched taut with dread. Just after 10 a.m., the silence was broken by the soft chime of the internal phone on the library desk. I stared at it, my heart leaping into my throat. It chimed again, insistently. Leo, who had been standing sentry by the door, glanced at me. "Answer it." I picked up the heavy receiver. "Hello?" "Aria." It was Leon. His voice was strained, the professional calm cracked. "You need to come to the command room. Now." "What's happened?" "Just come quickly." Leo was already moving, his hand resting on the weapon concealed beneath his jacket. "Stay behind me," he ordered. We moved through the silent halls to the main living area. The wall of monitors, usually dark or displaying maps, was alive with chaotic scenes. Security footage from what looked like a parking garage, shaking with movement. Another feed showed the elegant interior of a club, the Gilded Cage, now a wreckage of overturned tables and shattered glass. A third showed a live news helicopter shot over the city's riverfront, smoke pouring from a warehouse. In the center of the room, Leon stood, pale, speaking rapidly into a headset. Vito was there too, but he wasn't at the desk. He was pacing like a caged tiger, his phone clenched in his hand, his face a mask of barely contained fury. "Say that again." Vito bit into the phone, his voice lethally quiet. I couldn't hear the reply, but I saw the effect. Every muscle in his body went rigid. He stopped pacing. The air in the room turned to ice. "They took her." He said the words not as a question, but as a terrible, accepted fact. "Who?" Leon asked, turning from the monitors, his face ashen. "Who did they take?" Vito's eyes, blazing with a cold fire, found mine across the room. "Not her, Lucia." The name meant nothing to me, but the reaction from Leon and Leo was immediate and visceral. Leon sagged against the desk. Leo swore softly, viciously in Italian. "How?" Leon whispered. "Diversion," Vito spat. throwing his phone onto a sofa. It bounced and skittered across the floor. The club, the warehouse, both were shows, noise and light. They knew we were coming. They let us hit the empty targets while a separate team hit the safe house. They have my sister. The strategic genius, the careful planning, it had all been played. Bianchi hadn't been celebrating. He'd been setting a trap, and he'd taken the one piece he knew Vito could not sacrifice. "What are their demands?" Leon asked, already pulling out a tablet, his hands shaking. "They haven't made any yet." Vito ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of such uncharacteristic agitation, it was more frightening than his rage. "This is not a negotiation. This is revenge. This is torture." He finally seemed to truly see me, standing there frozen by the door. His gaze sharpened, the panic banked momentarily by a deeper, more primal instinct. "Leo, double the detail on Arya. Now. If they have Lucia, they know about her. She is not a secret anymore." "I'm already on it," Leo said, speaking into his own comms unit. "We need to move her," Leon said. "This location is compromised. They know you're here. They'll assume she's here." "No." Vito's voice cut through the panic. "Moving her is riskier. This is the most secure location in the city. We lock it down. We turn it into a vault." He began issuing orders, his mind clicking back into ruthless gear. "I want biometric overrides on every entry point. I want the building's external security integrated into our feed. I want a floor-by-floor sweep. Now." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Men I'd never seen appeared, receiving terse instructions. Vito was the calm at the center of the storm again, but it was a different calm, deadly, focused, vibrating with a new kind of threat. He walked over to me. "You will go to the panic room, not your suite, the actual panic room." "I don't want to hide in a hole," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. "Your sister is out there. You need... I don't know what you need, but hiding isn't it." He gripped my shoulders, his fingers firm but not painful. "What I need is to know you are not the next person they take. What I need is one less variable to calculate. Do you understand? You are not a soldier. You are a civilian under my protection. And I am failing spectacularly at protecting anyone today." The raw admission, the flicker of guilt and fury in his eyes, stunned me. "The panic room, now. That is not a request." I nodded. Leo led me away, down a hidden corridor behind a panel in the library, to a steel door with a keypad and a retinal scanner. The room inside was small but well appointed. A bed, a bathroom, monitors, and communications equipment. A gilded cage within the fortress. Leo secured the door from the outside. I was alone. Hours passed. The monitors showed only a rotating display of security camera feeds. Empty hallways, the rooftop, the service entrance. No sound. I was cut off from the nerve center, from the agony of whatever was unfolding. I thought of Lucia, a sister, a woman with a life, a history, now a pawn in a game of monstrous men. I thought of Vito's face when he said her name. The icy control had shattered, revealing a depth of fear and love I hadn't believed him capable of. It humanized him in a way nothing else had. It made the danger more terrifying. The door hissed open. It was Leon, looking even more drained. He carried a tablet and a sandwich. "Any news?" I asked immediately. They made contact. He set the food down, not meeting my eyes. They sent a video. "And? She's alive. Unharmed. For now." He pulled up the video on the tablet but didn't play it. "They want Vito. They want him to come alone to a location at midnight. They want him to kneel, to beg. Then they will kill him, and after, they will let Lucia go." His voice was hollow. "They're lying, of course. They'll kill them both." The plan was so crude, so vicious. It wasn't a strategy. It was gloating humiliation. "He won't go," I said, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Leon just looked at me. She is his sister. Of course, he would go. The warden would step out from behind his door and walk into the chaos to save his family. The code demanded it. The man beneath the boss demanded it. There has to be another way. We are working on it. The location is an old fish packing plant on the river, isolated. We have schematics, but they have scouts, counter-surveillance. If we move in force, they'll know, and they'll kill her. He rubbed his eyes. Vito is preparing to go. He's making arrangements. Arrangements for his succession, for his death. No, I said, standing up. Let me see the video. Arya, you don't want to... Let me see it. He hesitated, then tapped the screen. The video was shaky and dark. A concrete room. A woman sat on a metal chair, her hands bound behind her. She was in her 30s, beautiful, with Vito's sharp bone structure and dark hair, but her eyes, even filled with fear and defiance, were warmer. She stared straight into the camera, her jaw set. A man's distorted voice spoke off camera. A message for your brother, Principessa. Lucia Cascio lifted her chin. Vito, she said, her voice clear and steady. Don't you dare. It's a trap. You know what to do. Then in Italian, she said something sharp and fast. The video ended. What did she say at the end? I asked. Leon's lips tightened. She said, burn it all. My mind, trained for years to analyze, to find patterns and provenance, began to work furiously, disconnected from the terror. A trap, a location, a sister telling her brother to burn it all. They're watching you, I said slowly. They know you'll try to find a way to save him, to mount a rescue. They're expecting the cavalry. Obviously, Leon said, despair creeping into his tone. So don't send the cavalry. I looked at the frozen image of Lucia on the screen. Send something they're not expecting. Send a distraction they can't ignore. Leon stared at me. What are you talking about? The idea was taking shape, wild and dangerous. Bianchi wants to prove Vito is weak, that his rules are broken. Taking his sister, making him kneel, that's the proof. So don't let that be the story. Change the story. How? You said they know about me, that I'm here. They think I'm Vito's soft spot, his new weakness. So, show them, but not as a weakness, as a provocation. The words tumbled out, half-formed but gaining conviction. If Vito is preparing to walk into their trap, let them see it. But also let them see that while he's doing that, something of his is hitting them somewhere else. Something they value as much as he values Lucia. Leon's eyes widened. The shipment. The one they took from us. The one that started this. Where is it? We have intelligence. It's in a bonded warehouse near the docks. Under heavy guard, but most of Bianchi's hardened men will be at the packing plant for the main event. A spark of grim hope ignited in Leon's eyes. If we could hit it, take it back, destroy it. While Vito is in their sight, it would be a masterpiece of misdirection. It would show them he's not beaten, that he can strike them even when they think they have him by the throat. And it might pull enough men away from the plant to give you a real chance to get Lucia out. I finished. It's insane, Leon breathed. It's a huge risk. If we fail at both, if Vito walks in there alone at midnight, he will fail. And so will Lucia. I met his gaze. You need to present him with an alternative. A gamble instead of a sacrifice. Leon looked at me for a long moment, as if seeing me for the first time. The barista, the archivist, was offering a tactical gambit. He stood abruptly. Stay here. Do not open this door for anyone but me or Matteo. He left, sealing me in again. The wait this time was agony. I paced the small room, my heart thundering. Had I just sent good men to their deaths with a foolish idea? Had I overstepped in a world I barely understood? Nearly an hour later, the door opened. It wasn't Leon. It was Vito Cascio. He looked like he'd aged a decade. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his hair disheveled. But his eyes were clear, focused, burning with that glacial fire. Leon told me your suggestion, he said, his voice rough. It was just an idea, a stupid one, probably. It is not stupid, he interrupted. It is audacious. It is exactly what Bianchi will not expect. He stepped into the room, the space shrinking around his presence. But it requires a credible distraction. I, walking into their trap, am credible. But to sell it, they must believe I am broken, desperate, that I have no other play. I nodded, not understanding where he was going. They need to believe I am so distracted by my sister's capture that I am leaving my most vulnerable possession unprotected. His pale eyes locked onto mine. You. The word hung in the air, cold and sharp. They know you're here, in this fortress. If I leave for the plant, and the fortress appears weakened, on lockdown, but vulnerable, they may try to take you too. To have both prizes. It would be an irresistible temptation for a man like Bianchi. Fear, cold and slick, coiled in my stomach. So I'm the bait, again. No. He took another step closer. You are the keystone. The plan Leon is preparing requires precise timing. The raid on the warehouse, the extraction at the plant, they must happen simultaneously. We will make it appear that the penthouse is vulnerable. We will even let a small team of theirs get close. But they won't be able to reach you. And while they are focused on that failure, and on me at the plant, Leon's team hits the warehouse, and Mateo's team extracts Lucia. It was a three-front war, a dizzying array of moving parts. The risk was astronomical. And you? I asked, at the plant? I will be on my knees, he said, a dark, savage promise in his eyes. For just long enough. The sheer, terrifying scale of the gamble stole my breath. It was a move from a man with nothing left to lose, playing the only card he had left. Absolute, ruthless defiance. Do you trust me, Arya? He asked, the question stark and straightforward. I thought of the soot on his cheek, the Chopin in the solarium, the weight in his eyes. I thought of him preparing to die for his sister. This was not a good man, but he was a man of his word, bound by a code, capable of love and fury in equal, terrifying measure. Yes, I said, and I meant it. Something profound shifted in his face. The last of the ice seemed to melt, revealing not softness, but a fierce, blazing intensity. He closed the final distance between us. His hand came up, cupping my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin. The touch was searing,